Its third uppermost terrace is the same height as its next door neighbor, though we
I'm
can't
gonna
really
film a
see
little
yet.
bit of this.
You'll see some of Trump Tower's lower floors are wavy, like the waves of the river. More contextualism. Adrian Smith, who designed this, is from Chicago. Smith also designed the current tallest building in the world, which is the Burj Khalifa in
Oh,
Dubai,
wow.
which looks similar to this, but it's got more layers and it's almost twice as tall. Up to your left, you will see a dome on a tower on the Jewelers Building. You see those corner temples? You might recognize those from a scene in Batman Begins, where he's standing up there looking down at the city below, cued romantic music. The Jewelers Building was originally designed for the jewelers with a car elevator so that the jewelers could drive straight in and get lifted up to the front door and not have to walk through the dark, scary parking lot where the mafia might be lurking in the shadows, ready to steal all those jewels in the 20s when the Jewelers Building was made. That was definitely a concern back then. Back up to your right are everybody's favorite giant twin corncob towers, Marina City. Marina City was designed by Bertrand Goldberg in the 60s. His idea was to bring people to come live
Job was there for a
downtown.
long
Back
time,
in
wasn't
his
it?
day, nobody lived in downtown Chicago. There was nothing to do here, just work and a smelly river. So Goldberg was the one that had this idea to create a self-sustaining complex with its own laundromat, grocery stores, retail shops, bowling alley, cinema, restaurants, and more. They've even got their own marina downstairs where its residents can safely keep their boats year-round. And you can see 18 floors of parking spaces, which are valet only. And you can see why there is no concrete wall up there, just some little posts and some little wires holding the cars in. And you can see some of those parking spots hang out a little bit over the river too, so you might be looking at those spots on the edge there and thinking to yourself, has anybody ever just driven a car into the river
There
from
was
up
a
there?
movie once,
And the
yeah.
answer is yes, they have, because this is America. Twice. Once was for a movie called The Hunter.
Yeah, a
with
movie.
Steve
I remember
McQueen,
that one.
And the other time was for a car insurance commercial. It must have been quite the policy on that one. Back up to your left, you'll see a beautiful glass tower with a Greek temple on top. This is 77 West Wacker, nice example of the neoclassical style.
Yeah, Renee, you remember when you met Ron? We lived right there. 2 buildings down.
Together in perfect harmony. You can see the modern glass windows framed by Portuguese royal white granite, making it look almost as if you're seeing through the building to the other side. It's a beautiful illusion. 77 was designed by a Spanish architect named Ricardo Bofill from Barcelona and built in 1992. And it's definitely one of my favorites. Back over to the right, you'll see a red brick building. This is the Reed Murdoch Center. Look carefully. You can count. It's got 6 bays of windows.
It used to be the old traffic court.
But only 5 bays of windows west of the clock tower, and that's because they had to come in and destroy a section of this building in the 20s to make space for the expansion of LaSalle Street in front of us here. In the 20s, Chicago was growing quickly and they needed that space. I'm sure these architects were not too happy about that change, but they did patch it up nicely. Nowadays, they have inside of here the headquarters of Encyclopedia Britannica. Does anybody over 30 remember Encyclopedia?
Yeah.
It's a good set of books.
Yeah.
Continuing up on our right is another tall, shiny glass tower called 300 North LaSalle. My favorite feature of this building is that lovely little steakhouse they have downstairs called Chicago Cut. I just went there a few months ago to celebrate my 5th season here working at Shoreline Sightseeing, because you got to celebrate number 5 with a good steak. Thank you. Heading to Merchandise Mart Station. Real quick, I want to just show you this first Chicago Chicago School of Architecture style. This was a transition phase from the old European styles to the more modern styles that came around the 20s. Speaking of which, we're going to take a look up to your right at this big, wide merchandise mart built in the Art Deco style. Art Deco always had deep inset windows, vertical racing stripes, polished Indiana limestone, and repetitive geometric shapes. Merchandise Mart has these 8 busts in the front that look like giant Pez dispensers. Those were the portraits of the 8 merchant princes of Chicago. Those were all wealthy businessmen that helped this city grow years ago by investing in it. Those were installed by the Kennedy family, who owned this for 50 years. Merchandise Mart occupies 2 city blocks. It has 7.5 miles or 10 kilometers of hallways inside. It's got offices and showroom floors, mainly, but of course they have some restaurants. They've got some nice little shops. It's interesting to walk around. I walked around it last time and I saw they have a hair salon too. And they used to have their own train station. That's where that train was going right now. And they used to have their own zip code until Chicago told them to share. Now we are entering Wolf's Point, which is the Y-shaped confluence of the 3 branches of the Chicago River. This is where it all started years ago with a settlement of fur trappers. The first thing they built here were 3 taverns because priorities never really change, do they? That settlement eventually grew to become the town of Chicago in the 1830s, and it has not stopped growing since then. We'll make free passes through this spot so you get to see it from different perspectives a few times. Up to your right, you see the brand new tall glass Salesforce Tower.
The
This one just
green
opened up
line,
this year.
L.
They just added those chairs like a few weeks ago though. And I still remember back a few years ago when this one was just a hole in the ground.
No, I say the green line,
So
L.
fast,
Yeah,
these
she's
days,
talking
don't
about
they?
this.
Yes.
Straight ahead of us is another tall glass tower with parabolic arches on the top and the bottom. This one that looks like a large hot pocket. That is River Point. River Point has the arch on the bottom because that section is built over train tracks and you cannot block any part of the trains with your building, with any part of your building, so they had to go around it. But it looks nice that way, I think, better than if they hadn't done that. That red spiral sculpture underneath is called Constellation by Santiago Calatrava. New fragrance for this season. No, he's another famous Spanish architect known for his spiral designs and lofty ambitions. Underneath all this, to the left, is a little walkway with some happy little trees and some round holes, specifically designed to ventilate the trains, which are now all underground as of 2017 when they finished that tower and its plaza. We are now slowly entering the North Branch of the Chicago River. The North Branch flows diagonally through the whole city. It forks a few miles north of here, and the source of this part of the river is many miles north in the suburbs. We're not going that far. We're only going a block or so, and then we'll take our first pause of 3, and we'll turn the boat around and we'll continue because we're just getting started. Up to your left, you'll see a little old pink building. That is the Fulton House. Fulton House was built in 1898, so that makes this the oldest building we'll see today on the tour. When Fulton House was built, it did not have any windows, and its walls were very thick because Fulton House was a giant freezer, a meat freezer. Chicago was the hog butcher to the world. So how did it get from freezer to residence that it is now? Well, they had to sit and wait 3 months for the ice to melt before they could do anything. The man in charge of its redesign was sailor and architect Harry Weiss. Being a sailor, Weiss loved boat thieves, and he just loved the triangular silhouette of his favorite sailboat. So a few years later, Weiss designed the 4 triangular-shaped river cottages right next door. When he built these in the late 80s, a lot of people said he was crazy. They said, who's going to pay all that money to live right by the river? This isn't even the nice part, but it is now. So joke's on them. One of those sold for over $2 million in 2015. Now everybody wants to live by the river. You'll see the Kinsey Park townhomes coming up to your left, between $1 and $2 million to live here. They all sold out before they were even finished in 2000. In contrast, to the right, you'll see the East Bank Club. They have their back facing the river. That was the more common posture towards this river years ago before Chicago cleaned it up and made it beautiful and fun like it is today. All right, here's where we're gonna take our first little pause. So, if you need anything downstairs, now's your chance. Bathrooms, drinks, snacks, maps, hats, lots of things that rhyme are downstairs, also shade. And if you have any questions, let me know. I'll be walking around up here. How are we doing so far? All right.
That's great.
We'll continue shortly. Thank you.
I wouldn't mind. I only want to know living over there.
Yeah, JP got
Huh?
JP got
Who?
JP.
Oh, okay. Right.
I know.
Okay.
It's a straight gated community. You can't even get in without.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen the front of it. Yeah. It's been a long time since I've been on this
I
boat.
don't know. I think he still owns it. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. Because they got so many places. But I think so. We come down here for a couple of nights.
Okay. I know Chairman Hall used to own one over there near, Navy Pier. She lived right off the river.
Is that their parking garage? Just top of it, like a building. See that blue one there, right here? See the green? Yeah, that's what
Yeah, it's gonna be a new building.
right.
New.
That's what I'm saying, like, whoa. You know what I'm saying?
We're gonna claim some of this tonight. We're gonna own one over here, one over there.
No, somewhere, yeah.
Yes.
Put it in trust. for my
Yep.
grandkids. However many they come, fix it so that
Mhm.
it's not just one set of grandkids.
Yeah, we just said whoever
Yeah.
come in town,
Yeah.
you can use it this
Yeah.
week. I mean,
That's what I plan to do with Ron's place.
okay.
I really do. I don't even plan to stay there every day. I just go down there for the weekend.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out assessments are very high, extremely high.
Yeah.
So they'd be paying for it, but it'd be assessments that
Yeah.
would kill them.
So that would be a good reason to, what y'all be renting. You can rent them out, but I would only do it to like your Latter-day Saints people, somebody you can trust.
No,
That
you
would
have
help you pay
you
the.
have to go for the board. Their
Oh yeah,
board
you have to
and
get
their building
approved.
is
Oh
so
yeah,
strict.
yeah. And some of the older buildings they don't allow you, because I remember the people had some people bought condos in Trump Place specifically to rent out, and he didn't want them to rent them out because he wanted to be added renting his places out.
But I know we didn't.
But they won. They case they because it wasn't in their contracts when they first bought it.
All right, let's continue. So, you may have noticed this big wide open bridge in front of us here. That is the Carroll Avenue Bridge, and it's always open. It's got train tracks on it. The same train lines that used to run through the two sections of the Wrigley building that we saw in the beginning. But we already know that line no longer exists. So, this bridge was turned into a heritage site, and now the city maintains it. They test it once a year, they close it to make sure it's still working. You drive a truck across and back, so you say we're good to go, still working, because you get more money for active status, and then they just leave it open. Why don't they leave it closed? I'll show you.
Get those
Take a look over to your right and see that
seagulls
street level right
posted
there.
over
Eye level with it. If the bridge were to close, it would come down to about here, and we would not be able to pass through. The city knows it is much more important to have a constant flow of boat traffic going through here than an old bridge down that no one's using. And that's why it stays open. And it looks kind of cool. It's right in the middle. Up to your left, you'll see another tall glass tower. This is Wolf Point West. This one's still fairly new, fairly modern. This is a residential building. And I know that because I can see that they have balconies, and I can see some of them have their windows open. Also, I have a friend that lives there, but for the other reasons. Those are features you will see
She
in
said
a
she planned
residential
on
building
living there.
oftentimes, but not for an office space. Offices are not built for our comfort as much as our homes are. You can see the lower floors of Wolf Point West have their columns showing. That is because of a law established in Chicago in 2004 requiring all new buildings from then on to be set back 30 feet from the river, about 10 meters from the river, so that the public can access the shoreline, because this is a public river and everyone deserves the right to enjoy it. This has been fun watching all this go up. Now, everybody, eyes up, cameras up. Take a look over to your left. You will see one of the most beautiful views in the entire city. This gorgeous canyon of buildings around the main branch of the Chicago River. I'll give you a few moments to just enjoy. All right, now take a look up to your right. You might have to block the sun. You see a perfectly normal building until you look at the bottom and notice it's only about twice the width of our boat. How does this building not just blow over on a windy day? Science. They also have columns inside, like the ones we saw sticking out of the other one. They are called caissons. They are steel reinforced concrete. They extend all the way to the roof, to the floor, and 120 feet down to the bedrock, 40 meters down to hold it, to anchor it in place. All of these super tall buildings have these caissons. They need it to keep it stable because the earth underneath is
I left my
soft. So
bottle
you need
of
to
water
have an
too.
anchor in the
Sitting
bedrock.
right at the door.
But this one has 12 of those caissons, and they are 12 feet in diameter. That's about 4 meters thick, and that occupies a lot of the ground floor, but that's what you need when you have a building of this shape. This is called 150 North Riverside Plaza. As we pass by it, you can see it's actually got large steel support beams on the outside, extending upward and outward, like the branches of a tree, to cradle all of that weight efficiently. This creates a fun feature. Everybody look up to your right. You see the reflection clearly of our boat going by. You might even be able to find yourself if you wave, say hi, fun little view. See, it's very clear right there. Now, this building also has 12 giant tanks of thousands of gallons of water up near the top called inertial slosh dampers. And what they do is whenever this tower starts swaying gently in the breeze, which is normal for a tall tower, a few inches, the
You
water in
just
those
don't
tanks
know what I
will
went through this
slosh back and
last
forth.
week
Back and forth, and that
to get
movement will
Fred's
actually
ashes
help to
from
bring the
her
building
that we would
back
be
to
on
its center
to be
from
in
above
our
as well.
Honey. It's the
Over to your
hardest
left, you'll see
thing.
three
She
pointed
cussed me
V-shaped
out.
metal feet. They're similar shape as the last one because it's the same architect, Dutch Partners, and that is their signature style. You'll notice that all these architects are artists. They all have their own unique, recognizable style.
And then, so let's
You can see the big ridges going up and down the side of this one.
what you think you do with your wild?
They're designed because they look nice. They definitely look nice. They were also designed to help catch and break up wind currents to help reduce sway. And this unique shape allows each floor to have 14 corner offices because everybody that works here is very
Oh,
important.
see, she thinks I'm jealous of her. Oh, so stupid.
Continuing up on the left, you will see a large throne-shaped arch deck. This is the Opera House. It's got offices too, which they lease out to have money to run the opera, the system. The theater is behind the big flat space in the middle. Look in the center of it, you can see the comedy and tragedy faces of classical
And
theater
Marvin,
up there.
I've been telling her to
All
get
5
an
of them.
extra
Below the
credit
faces,
card
you
and
can
give
read the
to
name of the
us.
building. Let's all read it together. It says Civic
So we could, at
Opera
least if something happened to her, at least we
Building.
have the
They
money
didn't
to
have
do
spell
something
check
with
back
it.
then. No,
Thank
they
you.
did
I would
that on
have
purpose. They
certainly.
knew what they were doing.
Rachel, didn't
They
you
were going for
graduate
the
here?
classical look.
Yeah.
So they were thinking classical like ancient
I want
Rome,
to take
which spoke Latin, which had used fees instead of shoes. That was the look that they were going for. The Civic Opera Building opened its doors in the fall of 1929. Who remembers their history books? That was also the same time as the
Did you
stock market
somebody roll
crash
with her? That's how
in
you
the
know she
beginning
can
of the
drive.
Great
No,
Depression.
I just know.
And after that was World War II, and after that was retirement from World War II. So that meant in a very long period of
the
time
burial
in
thing.
which there was no
All
demand
you know
for
how to do
large
is get there and
office
drive
buildings
back
in
home.
major
So
cities.
that they
So
ended
there
up
was
back
no slow,
downtown.
gradual evolution of styles during that time. When they did finally start building again in the late 50s, nearly 30 years later,
Yeah.
the new style that emerged was completely different than anything anybody had ever seen before. It was just a total reboot, back to basics, back to square one. The new style was called modernism. To your right, you will see 2 examples of black box modernism. These are gateway centers 1 and 2 by Skidmore, Owens, and Merrill. The father of black box modernism was a German architect named Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. He always said, less ist more. Mies van der Rohe lived through 2 world wars and a depression that made him into a very practical man. And so was his style, very practical,
That's
just
one of theirs too. They own that
glass
one
and
too.
steel, no decorations.
Yeah,
All that
more
stuff on the
shade.
bottom is new. So, no decorations means fewer materials, right? And that means cheaper, that means faster to produce, and
I
that
do too.
is just what everybody needed after that very long architectural drought. So this style, black box modernism, became very popular for many years to come. Until people started getting tired of less is more. His rivals started saying less is a bore behind his back. They said, let's do something different and exciting and new. How about we spice things up? Let's make the next one white. So they decorated Gateway Center 3 in white stone and concrete. Baby steps, but the slow, gradual evolution of styles was back. They call this the international style of modernism because this style became popular all around the whole world in the 70s. Everywhere you go, they have a building that looks like this. Definitely got that 70s look. Now, it's short little neighbor here. This is not one of the gateway centers, but it's an interesting building. The little short one has big X's on the outside of it, all around it. Those are holding up the roof from the outside, meaning the inside is completely open, no columns. That made it easier to exchange commodities visually. That was the original purpose of this building. Now the purpose of this building is to be a bakery right next door to a gym. The toughest choice of them all.
This is not a residential. They just got these chairs out there.
All right, continuing on the right is our 4th and final gateway center. This one was built in the 80s. You can see them finally starting to really get creative again. It was the 80s after all. Notice the windows bubble outward to create a rippling effect as you go by, like the waves of the river contextually. The building curves inward right here because the river curves inward right here. I'll show you a picture of the curve in the river on a map on the way back up. You notice the glass windows are actually tinted slightly bluish to reflect and represent the color of the sky. Now, Gateway Center 4 was also in a major movie called The Dark Knight. In the opening scene of Dark Knight, the Joker's men were positioned up near the top of this building, and they shot a cable across with a grappling hook that attached so they could use it to zip line
Do you
over
remember,
Van Buren
Rachel?
right here, so that they
Remember
could
we was
rob
on the line?
bank
The
and
helicopter
rob
actually
the
landed
store.
at my
If you
building.
watch that scene
You
very
remember?
carefully, you can actually catch a little glimpse
Yeah, you all
of the
were there.
Chicago
They were
River
right
right
there on the
here.
river when I was
And of
living
me
at
giving
River
a tour
City.
right here. No, not that part, but I get a little carried away. But you do see lots of little bits of
I always wanted
Chicago
Ron to
throughout
work
those
here, this
Batman
building.
movies
Okay,
and
yeah,
many other movies as well. So this big Art Deco to our right is actually our old main post office. And this was built, this was the largest post office in the world because Chicago was the mail order catalog capital of the world with all the big name retailers here, especially Sears. So, back before Amazon was a thing, right? So they made this post office so big, they designed it with a big hole in the middle so they could fit a 6-lane highway which goes right through the building and out the other side like nothing. It served Chicago well for many decades, but eventually they had to shut it down. The old classic building sat there abandoned, lights out, from the 90s until just a few years ago when some investors came in, fixed it up, turned it into fancy new office spaces, which they opened up
It's all
in December of
apartments now.
2019.
With the two apartments.
Which, as you may recall, was not a great time to open an office space. Whoever would have it right after.
Because they had another flood.
But it's been
So
a
they
few
bought
years
everybody
now,
out?
so they have managed to fill
They
it up. So
had
it
to
was a
because
good
the people couldn't
investment
afford the
eventually.
special
Because you know,
assessment.
one of my doctor's friends, Dr. Briggs, she
We are
lived
now
in the
currently
bottom.
on
Okay.
the south branch of the Chicago River.
She's
We
somewhere
will
else.
continue floating
Okay.
south a few more blocks and then we'll take another pause, we'll turn the boat around, and we'll see more of the city from a different perspective. The next
Another
neighborhood
building.
south of here
That's
along the
new.
river
That's the new
is
building.
Chinatown.
That's the one.
Beautiful neighborhood,
Yeah.
lots of great restaurants and some karaoke bars that I may or may not know about. And we actually have a new shoreline sightseeing taxi dock in Chinatown. So it's actually a lot easier to get there by river. So feel free to ask about that at the kiosk. We're open on weekends for now. I'm not sure if today as a holiday counts on that or not. The next neighborhood south along the river is Pilsen. It's a beautiful Mexican neighborhood with gorgeous murals everywhere and some really good Mexican food. And if we were to continue floating south with the current of the river, we would end up in the Gulf of Mexico in about 2 weeks. It's all connected.
About 2 weeks.
Takes a few turns, but once you get to the Mississippi, it's all straight. Now, the population of Chicago is about 2.7 million. It has not grown
Rachel,
or changed much.
do you know what
decades,
stood at that building?
except for
The
downtown.
film when you and
Downtown
DJ came
is
down?
much larger in
Yes,
population because the
where they
city
filmed the,
has been
what was the
cleaning
name of the
up the
movie?
river. The city
And
has
that's
been
where they,
adding more
and
river
the,
walks and parks and nice things downtown, and so you're seeing more and more
Batman
land
building.
to live
The
in
Batman
these
film is where they
neighborhoods,
landed the
especially
helicopter
if you're
on that
really
vacant
busy
lot,
and
yes.
doesn't commute that way. And so and then that's what's going on here. The Reed.
So
to the left
actually,
is
I
brand
lived on
new,
the
tall
south
glass
end of the river,
residential building.
and
This
I
one just
lived
opened up
on
to
the
tenants
north,
in May.
well, the
It's residential
downtown
because
end
they
at
have
Watkins.
balconies and a few
That's where
windows open.
Renee and Ronald met when I was
Now
living
just
at,
beyond the Reed,
right there
you'll
at
see a building
Watkins.
that curves in and out
Yes.
like a big S right next to it. That is River City. River City was designed by Bertrand Goldberg, the same architect that designed Marina City. The
They're
Corn
all
Pop
rentals
House.
now.
You see the resemblance?
So they flooded again.
Believe it or not,
And the
this
assessment,
architect
see,
was
my
a student
assessment
of
was-
Ludwig
first it was
Mies
6,000,
van der Rohe,
then it went
the
up to
black box
15,000.
architect from Germany.
That's just special
And
assessment.
Goldberg here was
That
not a
first
huge
flood that I
fan.
was in. And the second flood is when the people decided
And,
that enough, that was enough.
Goldberg was not a fan of his Professor Square style, was he? Now, some of you may have heard of the Great
I think I stayed
Chicago
down there.
Fire of
Video.
1871. It actually started a couple blocks off that way in what used to be a barn owned by an Irish Catholic immigrant named Mrs. Catherine O'Leary. The newspaper said that this terrible urban fire started
Yeah, they've
in
always
Mrs.
had the river
O'Leary's
dock, but
barn
not these
when
boats will
her
come in here.
cow
They are
kicked
making
over
money
lantern and
renting
set the
this
barn on
out
fire.
because it's
And
not
that fire
condo
spread
now. They don't
quickly
have to go to the board
because
for nothing.
it
They
had
rent
not
it.
rained in weeks, and it was a windy day, and there were no building regulations. All of the buildings were made of wood.
Yeah, that's the
Sidewalks were made
Icon
of wood
Theater.
because the city was built on a marshland. But
Yeah,
sometimes
that's
they
the
would rot,
parking
so
lot
they
over there.
waterproofed them.
Remember that?
With
And they just
turpentine.
finished. They
That's
just.
the beginning of the list of
Yeah.
things that went wrong that day. The fire
Well,
started.
the parking lot has
Grew
always been
rapidly,
there.
and the wind caused fire tornadoes to form, which crossed the river, flinging embers in every direction and chaos. The fire burnt for 3 days. It destroyed 18,000 buildings. It killed 300 people, and it left 100,000 people homeless, devastated, sad, and angry. And here's where this one newspaper stepped in. They told that story, but they did not know what started the fire because no one ever knew what started the fire. But the newspaper knew that the people were angry, so they gave them what they wanted. Someone to blame, a scapegoat. Except in this case, it was more of a scape cow. They created a vast cowspiracy that still persists to this day. It seems those journalists had some sort of beef with Mrs. Catherine O'Leary and her bovine friend. The things that they said about her were just utterly ridiculous. But they just kept milking that story for all it was worth because the stakes were high. That's what I heard. That's what I heard.
The apartments at the Icon. Where the
But
shopping
you know,
mall
it was
is.
upset a lot of people.
No,
But
those are
eventually, they
rentals.
just kind of moved on.
Where the
And that is the
H&M
story of the
is, where
great
you
Chicago
and Hannah go
fire.
shop
All right.
sometimes. So we
On
at
that note,
Roosevelt
we're
Road
gonna do a
now.
little pause right around here. But you know what? This is some bonus material. This little old power plant here. This is the old powerhouse for Union Station. This one's been abandoned for over 20 years. It's on the endangered buildings list. They're not sure what its fate will be. All right, here we're going to turn around. If you need anything downstairs, bathrooms, drinks, snacks, maps, hats are all downstairs. Stay hydrated. Have a nice cold drink downstairs. If you have any questions, let me know. And how we doing so far?
Just wonderful.